Hi, this is Aaron Bartley, and today we'll be discussing some middle stage sit and go play. We'll be looking at spots where the chip disparity is a little off, when you don't have a small stack, but you also don't have a very large stack, where a lot of the people at the table have similar stacks, and you want to stay out of trouble in those spots while still trying to accumulate chips. Middle stages in the sit and go is traditionally 6 and 5 handed. After a couple of people have busted out, but you're not yet at the bubble, it's important to stay vigilant and try to accumulate chips while getting in tough situations less frequently. Let's look at an example of a sit and go in the middle stages with the chip stacks like I had previously mentioned. Here we have 5 of the 6 remaining players with around the same chips. Jeff, Tony, Les, Dan, and myself all have right around 2,000 chips. Nick, on the other hand, has a much larger stack, 3,500. With stacks like this, and blinds at what they are, not counting the big stack of Nick, everyone else has basically the exact same stack. All of our stacks are effectively 20 big blinds, and while that creates the illusion of play, with the blinds only be 50 and 100, there actually is far less play than it seems. Any 3-bet that's put in by any of the average stacked players is going to end the action. For example, if I raise to 300 and Les 3-bet to, say, 800, he's declaring exactly what he's going to do. He's putting all of his chips on with this hand. If I were to 4-bet him, he's always going to call. If I were to cold call pre-flop and put the money in on the flop, he's almost always going to call. If I cold call pre-flop and check to him on the flop, he's almost always going to go all in. There's a lot less decision making that can go on at this stage, especially less than it seems. Any 3-bet would pretty much close the action, so you have to be a lot more careful with what kind of hands you're going to open the pot with. At this stage in the game, really your only decisions are going to be, am I going to open? If I open, can I stand to call a 3-bet? Or, if someone else opens, will I be 3-betting them? Now let's look at some examples of hands that demonstrate these principles. In this hand, I have 5s, and the action is folded to me. If I were to put in a raise here, and the action were to fold, and then I get 3-bet, I now have a difficult decision to make. He's 3-bet 800 of his 2,000 stack. I know that he's going with the hand. If I shove on him, he's going to call, so now I have to think about what kind of hands is he 3-betting me with. Is he 3-betting with only big aces and big pairs? Is he 3-betting with a wide range because he thinks I've been very active? Is he just bored with how the sit and go has been going and wants to start influencing some action in order to get a big stack or move on to the next sit and go? I don't know. It's player dependent based on what I've seen of him, what I know about him, and what else I've seen in the past. But this is in general a bad spot to be put in. I have a small pair. Almost any hand he turns over, I'm not in that great of shape against. I don't know what to do. I've only committed 300, so if I fold, I still have the same effective stack of everyone else. It wouldn't be a great call, and certainly wouldn't be a great shove. Really, in this spot, I have to give him credit for a bigger hand, because there's no reason he would be putting his stack in with total air against me, and anything other than total air has me dominated or a coin flip. I would have to fold this hand and try to find a better spot. Now, in general, I could probably anticipate this. The blinds are going up there, the stacks are somewhat even, I have a small pair in early position. It's reasonable to assume that if I raised, I might get some pressure. This is where paying attention to the table would come in. If everyone had been playing very tight, I might be able to get away with it. If everyone had been playing pretty loose, I probably won't be able to get away with it. In general, though, it's probably best to let those hands go, because you're going to be able to find a much better spot in the near future. Let's look at another example. Here we're six-handed again with one big stack, and the other five of us are about average with effective 20 blinds. We have ace-7 on the button. Now if it's folded to us, we're put to a decision. Do we raise or fold? Arguments can be made for both. If we raise, we're now left with a little bit of a dilemma if someone plays back at us. Let's say the small blind folds and the big blind makes it all in, which, as I mentioned before, any 3-bet would be. I'm now put to a decision. What kind of range can I put him on that he would make that move with? He'd certainly do that with decent pairs, all of his monsters. If he's thinking I'm on a steal, he could certainly do that with not very good hands, smaller aces and kings and queens that I would beat. I'm put to another tough decision. If I wanted to play, I'd have to play for almost all of my chips, and it's in the middle stages of a sit and go, so there's still a lot of value in being around with a decent stack to take advantage of some of the weaker play. I would probably fold here, not having any extremely player-specific reads. The goal is to minimize the tough decisions you have to make. In that example, when I raise from the button, I don't want someone to 3-bet me because I can't really call unless I know specifically that that's a very, very loose player. If I knew the players were tight, I'd raise more often and with a wider range of hands. If I knew they were a little bit looser, I probably wouldn't raise that often, and when I do, I would tighten up my range so I could trap them when they 3-bet me. Let's look at a similar situation where our decision is made easier by what we know about the players. In this situation, we have ace-9 suited on the button, and it's folded to us. Let's say, for example, that we've played with Dan and Les in many sit-and-goes this week. We know that Dan is a tight, solid regular player, and Les is also a regular, but one that's more aggressive and willing to take chances. We know that if we put in a raise, Dan will usually fold unless he has a solid hand, but Les is much more likely to be shoving with a wide range of hands, since he knows that we play a little tighter and aren't looking to get into those tough situations. Because we know this about his thought pattern, if he does in fact shove, we can hypothesize that he's doing so with such a wide range of hands that it would be correct for us to call, because we're ahead of most of those. Knowing your player in the sit and go helps you get out of those difficult decisions and make more correct ones. Here's another spot that you'll see in many sit and goes that you play. And here we have a above average hand, ace-10 in the small blind, and it's folded to the cutoff, who makes a standard opening raise. Now when it's folded to us, we have a decision. We can fold if we think he has a better hand, call if we're very unsure about what his hand could be, or raise if we feel that he has a fairly weak hand. Our decision is helped by the fact that we almost close the action. There's only one player, Dan, who hasn't acted yet, meaning that it's very unlikely for someone to have aces or kings and easily take our stack. Whatever we do, the decision will then be put on Jeff. Since he has a average stack and raised when folded to him in a standard steal position, it's safe to assume that he probably has a very wide range of hands that he would raise with. Of that wide range, there's only a very few that he could actually call an all-in with. This means that if we risk our stack and go all in, it's highly likely that he would fold, winning us the pot and increasing our chips by 400. This is good twofold. First off, we've increased our lead by 700 on Jeff, since he lost the most chips in that hand, and we've also increased our lead on the remainder of the table, allowing us to have extra leeway in the plays that we make from here on out. It's good to try to find these spots where you could 3-bet with impunity and get people to fold very often. Usually if people are opening from later as opposed to earlier, it's safe to assume that they have maybe a weaker holding and will fold to some pressure. It's good to find these spots and take them, because while you might not win all of them, the ones that you do will give you a very big advantage going forward at relative low risk. Here's an example of a hand in a sit and go where you can get a little tricky. In this situation, we have 5-6 suited in the big blind, and it's folded to the button, who makes a standard raise. Now when it's folded to us, we of course have our full complement of options. In this situation, occasionally, I'll elect to call. Now the reason for this isn't because I think the 5-6 suited is ahead of his range, or that I think he's going to slow down on the flop and let me see a river. The reason is because by making this play with a very bad hand, it allows me to disguise my very large hands. A lot of players will only make this sort of slow play with aces, kings, or ace-king. When they do, it becomes painfully obvious when they have those big hands, and other players can get out of the way. By doing it with a not-so-great hand, it disguises when you're doing it with big hands. For example, in this situation, he doesn't know if I have a 5, if I have a small ace, if I have aces, or if I have 4 high. He's very confused, and when he's confused, he's much more likely to make the wrong play, be it to fold when I have a bluff, or to pay me off when I have aces. By mixing up your play, and by doing the same thing with both good hands and bad hands some percentage of the time, it confuses your opponent and allows you to pick up more pots more often. While we're mainly doing this to be tricky and to disguise when we have a monster hand, it's always good to be playing hands that can still hit the flop. Suited connectors, small pairs, even suited kings and suited queens. If we're playing trash hands like this, like Jack Deuce or 7 Deuce, we're almost never going to hit the flop, and we're almost never going to want to see showdown. That's just throwing chips away, hoping to get aces at some point in the future. If we do it with hands that have good possibilities to be able to hit a flop hard and win at showdown, we're winning 2 ways. Let's look at another example from a little farther into the sit and go. Here we see one of the average stacks has busted the other average stack, and now Jeff is sitting at 4,000, the chip leader of the sit and go currently. We have ace-5 suited in the small blind. It's folded to Jeff, who puts in a normal raise. When it's folded back to us, we still have our full complement of options. In this spot, I like to play back at him and shove my stack at him. A lot of times, he's going to fold anything but the very premium hands. The reason for this is twofold. He feels that I'm a short stack, and it's getting close to the bubble, so I'm probably not going to do this unless I have a very good hand. The other reason is that he probably has an eye for those top 3 money spots. He knows that he can fold this and still comfortably be one of the chip leaders. He's not going to be playing a lot of trash hands to try to take me out, because he doesn't want to risk losing this pot and going back to a below average stack. More often than not, even though he came into the pot raising, and he has enough chips to do some damage, he's going to fold and let me pick up the pot and be that much closer to getting back to one of those large stacks. Let's look at the converse of that situation. This time the roles are reversed, and we have the big chip stack at the table. With ace-5 suited in the cutoff, and the other big stack folding, we can push around the other average stacks that are left. We know that if we raise and get played back at, we can more than likely call, as long as the person playing back at us isn't an extremely tight player. This is because a lot of those small stacks will be thinking exactly like we were thinking in the previous example. They think that we're a big stack, we want to keep our stack and try to squeak into the top 3 spots, and that they can play back at us with a wide range of hands, and that we're going to fold all but the premium hands. When they raise, we can assume that that's what they're assuming. And to counteract that, all we have to do is call. By doing this, we're putting ourselves into an advantageous spot, because more often than not, they're going to be shoving all in with a less than premium hand, so we don't need a very premium hand in order to call them. What's helping the situation is that even if we lose the all-in, we still have an average stack with 5 players left, and we can rebuild and get back into the game. We're not totally out of it. However, if we win the hand, we now have a huge chip stack with 4 people left, in great position with the other large chip stack, and we can really bully the table around and collect almost all the chips in play even before we get into the money, which gives us a great chance at winning the sit and go. We've reviewed some techniques that are great to use in the middle stages of sit and goes. If you combine this with the other sit and go lessons on Full Tilt Academy, you can start to play optimally in every sit and go you play, and really start to watch your ROI increase. I'm Aaron Bartley for Full Tilt Poker Academy. Thanks for watching.